everyone, and welcome to We Go Back. I'm your host, Bryan Abou Chacra, and on this week's episode, we will be reviewing Not in Portland and Flashes Before Your Eyes, the 7th and 8th episodes from Season 3 of Lost. We open up to Juliet on the beach, sitting there crying, looking very upset, and then she passes Ethan in the hall, so we now know that this is a flashback. She then enters a room where on the countertop there is a clock or a symbol, some sort of statue that sits there that looks like a Dharma logo, but is actually the Tao symbol. And if you guys don't know what Tao is, I suggest you look it up. It helps to explain some things, but very simply, Tao is the absolute principle underlying the universe, combining with yin and yang and signifying the way that is in harmony with natural order. And then obviously yin and yangs are black and white. So just a quick thing to point out at the beginning here. Pay attention to that stuff. But it's a great misdirection because we later find out we aren't where we think we are. We also in this moment get a real life feel for who Juliet actually is. Not just this facade that she's been putting on for Jack, just her, just genuine. And we already know that she's a fertility doctor and that she is actually administering in this scene what she has been holding is fertility shots for her sister Rachel, who she's helping try to get pregnant. And then we find out, as I said, that they actually aren't on the island. They're in Miami. So she's actually from off island. And this idea that what Jack said about the others, that they can't even get off this island, we already know that this is wrong because on top of all of that, we've just seen Ethan walk down this same hallway and he is on the island, obviously. So he was from off the island at some point as well. Keep that in mind, folks. So we now come back to the operating room from the last episode, but we're seeing it from her perspective. And we see how Jack tells Kate to get out with Sawyer and run. Kate and Sawyer are able to get out. They beat up that asshole Danny and then they just run off. And in the OR, Juliet orders somebody to bring both of them back, and now it looks like she's lying to Jack. So which direction is she playing? We, at this point, have no freaking clue, but things are going haywire in the beginning of this episode. She seems to be doing things completely on her own. Maybe it's a power play. We'll get to that in a little bit. We jump back to the flashback where Juliet is sneaking into the lab and stealing experimental medicine. And she gets a call about an appointment on the way there. If you listen back to it, it tells you exactly who she's meeting. And it's really cool that they put that in that beginning of the episode. Really fun little detail that they put in there. As she is in there stealing medication, she gets caught by her ex-husband, who is an absolute asshole, and they really drive the point home in this episode. I really love it. I'm gonna bring it up every time it comes up, but they really draw this guy up to be a horrible person in everything he does. So really, really cool that they can make even offset characters that you never see again be really interesting. Love the character development in this guy, even over one episode. This cuts us back to the OR where shit's breaking down. Juliet's just been ousted by Jack about trying to kill Ben, and everyone else is just going nuts. She finally gets kicked out by Tom because she obviously can't help, and she is off on her own way. We catch up with Kate and Sawyer, who actually get to the beach, and then they just start getting shot at. I love this here because it's just a shot of Kate holding a radio, and it just gets blown out of her hands. And the first thing that I could think of at this point was, man, if I was holding a walkie-talkie and somebody shot it out of my hands, I'm pretty sure my hand would also get shot. But that's just me. I don't know about you. Maybe you don't get your hand shot up when you're holding radios that get shot. They do get saved by Alex, who has seemed to just save them every single time in this episode. This little guardian angel. She leads them to a little hiding space, and Sawyer calls her Sheena, referencing Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. Really good nickname, keeping in line with Sawyer's character, and it shows you again that he has a depth of knowledge that's just past the things that he does as a con man and what his surface level personality is. We come back to the OR where Ben has been awake for some time, and we just find out that he is able to understand what is going on, and he asks for Juliet. And they have no idea what to do because, well, Jack really isn't an anesthesiologist. This takes us into our flashback where Edmund calls Juliet into his office with that girl. Again, illustrating the horrible type of person that he is by giving this girl a job at the office as a lab technician and then making her go fetch his ex-wife for him instead of him getting her himself. What a piece of shit. He's a totally awful person, and I love the way that they keep drawing him in there. Even here, we see that the only reason that he wants Juliet is because he's discovered her research, and he knows that it could be potentially groundbreaking. So now that she's valuable, he wants her again, and he doesn't want to kick her to the curb and be rude to her the way he clearly was the night before. And he basically blackmails her into agreeing to do this research with him, otherwise he's going to rat her out. Again, totally piece of shit. Really love how they draw this guy up in this episode to be as awful as he is. We return to the jungle where Alex successfully helps Kate and Sawyer escape from Danny. I love the little talk back that she gives to Sawyer here that seems to stun him. He's kind of fed up with her. He doesn't want anything else to do with her, but she's got a boat and needs their help. And Sawyer knew there was a catch. You can tell by his face, and I love it. I love his character here. He just wants to get out of here, and he knows he's going to be rung around for a bunch of other shit. He's got to go help this guy Carl that we've already met. We come back to the OR where Jack and Ben talk. Ben just wants alone time with Juliet. He asks, as a gentleman, give me 3 minutes with her. And I love the scene here where Jack and Tom are standing there watching Juliet and Ben talk. And Tom just introduces himself as if he's a normal dude. And I think that that's so quaint. In the midst of all of this stuff in Lost, we have this guy Tom who's sort of been warming our hearts this whole season. Juliet a little bit as well. But this whole season we've sort of gotten this charm from Tom that we never expected. And originally, how we saw this guy with the beard and everything, we were supposed to hate him. And now we're kind of feeling a little bit of a, soft spot for him. At least I do. And I think that's the point of this scene here. We get him constantly formally introducing himself to people and feeling like he's a little bit more human. Juliet then comes out and says that she is going to go help Kate and Sawyer escape off the island, and Jack needs to finish the surgery. So, whoa, she was just wanting him dead, and all of a sudden, she's flipped the script 180 degrees. 108 degrees. That's a number. That's a number reference. If you didn't pick up on that, just stop listening to this podcast right now. We go to our flashback where Juliet is being propositioned by the Middleos Bio Company. They're there pitching, selling her hard, but she tells them that she can't go because of her ex-husband, and that the only way that she could go is if he were hit by a bus. She cries, she's very sad, and leaves. This takes us into the jungle where we see that Kate and Sawyer find Mac from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And if you didn't pay attention, but I always tell you to, I actually didn't in this episode, but Joey did, pointed out that he's reading the book A Brief History in Time by Stephen Hawking, which is very, very interesting considering the next episode that comes up. The one we'll be talking about after this, Flashes Before Your Eyes. Really heavy tie in there. So they trick him into thinking they're prisoners, and they find Carl in the crazy room where they're doing a sensory overload on him. And our good buddy Jake actually pointed this out to me in his email this week. He said that they're putting him through sensory overload to try to kind of brainwash him. Thanks for all your emails, guys. You can always email me, wegobackpodcast@gmail.com. Jake and Joey, really appreciate you guys' emails every week. Really awesome. Well, now continue where one of the slides I wanted you guys to see said something about God, but it also said Jacob loves you. This is now the second time in 2 episodes we've heard this guy Jacob's list before, and now God loves you as he loved Jacob, or something like that is what this slide says. Obviously, if you didn't stop and read all of those cards, that's not necessary for you, but you can. It's there. You have the technology. It doesn't add that much to it, but it's fun to read through it. The DVDs actually have that on there. You can watch those videos. So if you want to get, all sensory overloaded like Carl here, go ahead, pop that in, put on the eyeglasses, be real Clockwork Orange with it, and have a good night. They get Carl. Sawyer wants to know where the boats are, and the others are hot on their tail, but Juliet tries to call them off. They show up right after Kate and Sawyer leave the barracks or the prison facility, whatever you want to call that place. And Juliet says Ben's orders are not to pursue these people. Danny doesn't want to listen. He says Ben would rather die than see these people get off the island, which we know is not the case. But that takes us into our flashback, where we find out that Rachel, Juliet's sister, is actually pregnant. Juliet's research works, so she goes and wants to tell Ed all about it. But Ed, the miserable person he is on the phone. This is my favorite part. While he's on the phone, you think he's talking to some research guy or some professional acquaintance he has. He's talking to his mother. He's just treating his mother that poorly. Lost really doesn't have to bury a person this much, and there's really no reason to make this person so hated, but I think it's part of their overall comedy because within seconds, the dude gets obliterated by a bus when all he cares about is publishing this research, and she's just trying to say, hey, my sister, your former sister-in-law, is pregnant. Isn't that amazing? A woman who couldn't because she's sick, she can get pregnant now. Aren't you excited? And all he cares about is just publishing this work. What a piece of shit. Glad he got hit by a bus. This takes us back to the OR where Jack is finishing the surgery, but he accidentally nicks an artery. And then he has to finish and fix the problem that he just did at the same time. On the beach, Kate and Sawyer are making it to the boats, and I love Sawyer calling Carl Cheech here because he's high on whatever drugs they gave him to sensory overload him. But it's, again, two great nicknames in one episode. Love it from Sawyer. But as they're there, Danny shows up and is ready to kill them both. Danny is pissed. Juliet pops up out of nowhere, pops off, couple of shots, down. They're finally going to escape. They're going to take Carl with them, but they're going to have to leave back Alex. Before they leave, Juliet gives Kate the walkie and gets into the surgery, talks to Jack, tells him the story, tells him as he's pulling through, and right when he stabilizes, the BPM 108. Pay attention to that on the monitor. It's almost as if she narrated him through the end of that surgery. I think that's obviously the intention there. I'm not sure, but it's also the only way he would know they were truly off the island because she would have lied about the story. But I love the reactions by both Juliet and Tom in this scene. You can see that they have compassion for Jack and the person that he is and these people here that they're seeing, including Alex. They seem, again, a lot more human for the first time ever. But Jack makes Kate promise not to come back to the island and tells them to run, has the walkie turned off, and Kate and Sawyer escape with Carl. This now takes us into our flashback where Juliet is left at the morgue with her husband and her ex-husband, and he's just dead now. He's gone. Her whole world is like all up in nowhere. Her sister's pregnant, so she's happy about that, but now her ex-husband is dead, and she's just torn. She's an absolute mess. This brings us back into the OR where Jack and Juliet talk about what's next. And really all Jack cares about is what Ben said to her. And the thing that gets to her and the thing that gets to me here, because now I feel like, again, while we're getting compassion from these others towards, these people who we've been with the whole time, now I'm feeling compassion towards Juliet. We find out that the thing that made her change her mind about killing him is that he finally agrees to send her home. He promises that he'll send her home after she's been here for so many years. And that's nuts. And that is part what we see in the flashback here, our final flashback. We see Ethan again, but this time it's with that same person from Middleos, this guy Alpert, and he's really serious about getting her on board. And he wants her to come and be a part of his research. This is really heavy because we now have validation and real, actual concrete evidence that they can get off the island, that these others, that Ben might not necessarily be lying about everything. And I think that is shown in the very last scene when we see Jack's surprise on his face that they weren't bluffing, that they can actually get off the island. And we know this because, again, Ethan has been off the island. And now we also know Juliet used to not even be from here. So there is a possibility of it. And the guy from Middleos, this Alpert guy, he says that, well, we're a little bit more remote than Portland, and hence the name of the episode. So this takes us into one of the most amazing episodes of Lost. Flashes Before Your Eyes is so awesome. I love all of Desmond's episodes because they're just exciting. He's such a great character. I don't think he was originally meant to be there for very long, but they just wrote him in because the character had so much potential and such great great stories like this one. So we now have Desmond, who finds Charlie and Hurley on the beach and brings them to Saeed and Locke. They give them the Echo debrief, and Locke starts to game plan about what they're going to do next. In the midst of all of this, Desmond starts to run off. But Hurley is perceptive of all of this, has been observing Desmond's behavior, follows after him, and what we find out is Claire was out in the water and Desmond saves her from almost drowning. And we finally hear Hurley speak what he believes Desmond can do, which is see the future. We come back from our opening and Claire finds Des on the beach to thank him. We now see Charlie and Hurley, who plan to get Desmond drunk to figure out exactly what is going on with him, but he refuses first until he sees the type of whiskey that they're holding. That's obviously going to have some significance later on in the episode because everything in the show does. So they all get drunk, they sing songs, and it's happy until Charlie brings up how Desmond knew that she was drowning, that Claire was drowning earlier in the day, and then also brings up how he knew that lightning was going to strike just before it actually did. Charlie keeps egging Desmond on, and then he gets attacked while Desmond yells that you don't know what happened to me, you don't know what happened to me. Really funny scene. Love seeing Charlie try to take control in this situation and push somebody who's quite literally larger than him and push him to the point of losing his mind. Anyway, we now get back to the point where Desmond is turning the key. He turns the key, says, "I love you, Penny," and then opens his eye, wakes up, and Penny is there. He looks around and it looks like he's in the Dharma outfit, but really he's just been painting and is covered in red paint. He looks at the clock, and the clock itself also reads 1:08, in case you didn't notice that. Desmond and Penny talk about a appointment that he has the next day, or an interview that he has, and he talks about how he wants Penny's father's respect. And while we're listening to him talk, we hear the microwave, which makes the same sound as the button did as it would tick down. We now go to the next day where Desmond is standing in the lobby of Widmore's office and he gets flashes of things that he saw from the hatch after the delivery guy brings up the number 815, which, if at this point you don't remember, is the flight number of everyone who crashed on the island. But it triggers something in Desmond and reminds him of a time that he has not yet been to, if you consider where his mind is at this point. But once he gets up to Widmore's office, you see him sitting down in the chair, but behind him, there was a painting or a mural with a big polar bear on it and a Buddha. Got to pay attention to the backgrounds, got to pay attention to the murals. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that's in the room, like the boat that Desmond ends up pointing out later on, and then that brings up the conversation of the race that Widmore will put on every year and that he ends up joining later on. Very good, very detailed moment that we see. But the main point of this scene is we find out Desmond isn't there to try to get a job from Widmore, but to ask for Penny's hand in marriage. He's trying to be very noble, and Widmore appreciates this. He's impressed. He describes that this is something that is a good thing, and then brings up the same whiskey that we see on the beach. And he describes all of the great things about it and why it's so prestigious. And he tells Desmond that he'll never be worthy enough to drink the whiskey, let alone be with his daughter, denies him his permission for marriage to Penny. And Desmond leaves. He's distraught, very upset, and throws off his tie, and hears Charlie playing Wonderwall, asks how he knows him. Charlie has no clue of what is going on because he doesn't. He has absolutely nothing going into this and doesn't remember or know anything that Desmond is saying to him. But then it does dawn on Desmond what is happening, and he remembers this day. So he is living a memory that he has, and then finds a colleague of his who's a physicist and talks about what happens to him. Tells him that he is living a past that he has already gone through once. And then, as he's speaking with him, recognizes that song, Play Your Own Type of Music, from the second season opener that he plays on the record player. He knows that it is the trigger for a certain sequence of events, and then lays it all out to his friend. Friend doesn't really see it play through the way that Desmond thinks it does, and tells Desmond the best advice that he could give him, which is that if he feels the way that he does about Penny, and if it's as strong as he believes that it is, he should just stop messing around and marry her. Ask her to marry him and just cut the shit. And we kind of have seen this in their relationship when she saw him on the night that Jack was running the Coliseum. She's there to tell him, hey, be with me here and now. And he, at that moment as well, doesn't take the opportunity to be with her. So we can see that this is a recurring path for him, that he constantly runs away from this great thing that he keeps having put in front of him. So Desmond returns home and tells Penny about his day, tells her that he wasn't there for the job, and she can tell that he's down, so she wants to take him out. She wants to bring his spirits up. And this affects him. You can tell he doesn't like the idea that she's going to take him out for lobsters, which is, they say this because it shows her wealth. Obviously, Widmore has a lot of money. His daughter would also have a lot of money. He's uncomfortable with this, and she says, but she wants to do it because she loves him, and she likes to do things like this for him. We now see Desmond taking the advice of his friend at a ring shop, picking out an engagement ring for Penny, and as he chooses the perfect piece for her, the woman tells him that this is not what he does, that he goes to the island and he pushes that button. That's the most important thing that he does. And to prove her point, she takes him outside for a little bit of a stroll, points out a man with red shoes, and she tells Desmond how he doesn't marry Penny, and that she gets totally heartbroken and he ends up on the island. And as that happens, the man with the red shoes gets crushed, sort of like in The Wizard of Oz. But Desmond is upset that she didn't warn him. She knew that he was going to get crushed, but she didn't warn the man in red shoes that it was going to happen to save his life. And she explains that the universe course corrects itself, and that regardless of what she tried to do, that man would get killed regardless. And that this is what she's been trying to explain to him. He can't avoid the island. He went to the island because he was supposed to. It was his destiny or his fate, or he was meant to be there for one reason or another. And again, this woman knows something about his future if we're seeing a flashback or whatever this is in this moment, but we're seeing a different consciousness for Desmond in this entire episode. But he argues to her that he has the choice to do whatever he wants because he knows he has that capability, and he decides to go through with it, and he meets up with Penny. And now we see where the photo that he's been carrying for all of this time since he got to the island and was on the boat and everything that he's been through and prison, we see where that photo came from. It's a fabricated photo in front of a fake dock scene, and I love that they have that in the episode. I just think that's really funny to explain it as a fake background. But we also see why there's a big rift between Desmond and Penny that we get supported by when Widmore picks him up after he gets discharged from being in the army, that there was a separation, a big rift between them. We see the breakup between the two, and she calls him a coward, and we now understand why this word constantly triggers him to react in such violent or upset, I don't know what you want to call it, ways, but you see it definitely goes and cuts through him. And he doesn't go through with it. He breaks up with her and he goes back to that bar again. And then as he's sitting down, that same song from season 2 plays again. And it's the night that he described to his friend. And he realizes in this scene that he does have the free will that he just told this woman he had. And he could actually go out and make a difference. He wants to go get Penny back, and he is ready and willing to be with her. He realizes that he has this opportunity to take hold of it right now, and then he gets knocked out by that guy with the cricket bat. And I love that they sewed this in so seamlessly. The guy ducks because Desmond warns him, so he actually can affect the past. The guy never got hit. Desmond did instead. And that's what knocks him back into the current time. And he wakes up naked in the jungle and he sees the hatch remains and finds the photo. And we catch up with Desmond and Charlie on the beach. And we see how his life has just flashed before his eyes. But he explains the flash has never stopped. That he's been doing all of this stuff for Claire, fixing the hut that was not fit, not needing to be fixed, and going and saving her in the water, that he did all of this because each time Charlie would have died. If he tried to help Claire and if he tried to get out of the way, it would not work. He tells Charlie, one of our favorite lines in the show, he tells Charlie that no matter what he tries to do, Charlie is going to die. And that he's been trying to save him the entire time and that he can't keep doing it forever and Charlie is going to die, which is kind of the inevitability of life itself, but I think there's a bit of an immediacy to Charlie's dying situations, which might describe why he's been in so many so far. I remember telling you guys at the beginning of doing this podcast, pay attention to all the times that Charlie has nearly died in this show. He was hung from a tree. He was almost crushed by a cart on the plane. There are a number of times that Charlie nearly died and death seemed to skip him over. And now we're seeing that kind of wrap up with what Desmond is saying. So really cool thing to note. Just love that they start putting all of this stuff in this episode with Desmond, all of these themes about what he's supposed to do in Fate and where his consciousness was. Really, really cool. Love that we're going to start dipping into some of this stuff. It's going to get really, really heavy as we move along. Guys, love your emails, love your input. Always email me, wegobackpodcast@gmail.com with any thoughts, questions, theories, anything like that. Really love reading all your emails and seeing what you guys have to say about the episodes. Next week, we will be reviewing Stranger in a Strange Land and Trisha Tanaka is Dead. Those will be really fun episodes. We'll catch up with some people who we haven't seen in a little bit. Guys, follow me at King Lord Bryan. I forgot to say that part because that's a thing that you guys can do. I will see you next week. Well, we won't because this is an audio podcast.